Boom! What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. I'm your host, Alan Sakian. Got an interesting thoughts on episode for you today. We're going to be talking about McGregor versus Khabib. Now, this is a little bit strange because what just happened was a very important fight for the Ultimate Fighting Championship for UFC. It was UFC 229. And a lot of people are fans of UFC, and UFC is in many ways important because it's like, you know, men and women figure out how to really challenge their bodies to the peakest performances out of all humans. That you're the strongest, you're the best mixed martial artist, that you have the best art and strategy of fighting, of close quarter combat without weaponry besides just your body. And that's really fascinating and cool. And it's been done for a long time now. This is, you know, ever since we've really evolved from chimps, we've been figuring out how to do close quarter combat now. But it's been with us since we've evolved, basically. But something that is also very strange about this process is kind of just the simple fact that we're still bashing each other in the face. The fact that we're actually fighting. So the point of, you know, seeing if we can choke the other person to death, or if we can give them concussions and knees to the face or whatever it may be, organ injuries. Sometimes people die in these fights that we're kind of, it can be a little bit like, why haven't we transcended fighting yet? So there's kind of this dichotomy between UFC, which is, you know, peak performance of human bodily achievement. And then the other one is sort of like, are we going to transcend fighting? So that's this interesting dichotomy that I've been posed with. But there's also another really important aspect of this to talk about, which is that the fights themselves are very lucrative. So it's pay-per-view and the fighters make a lot of money. And my question earlier when we actually saw the Logan Paul KSI fight that happened, the boxing fight that happened, was that, is it possible that they're making money from the fight and then they're choosing to invest it into cool things like charities and solving world problems and starting companies and acting on entrepreneurship and hiring people to do all of that? Because if that was the case, then that would offset a huge amount of the, you know, critique around this type of stuff. So that's the same question for McGregor and Khabib. Is it possible that they are taking the money and funneling it into really important endeavors for progressing humanity? Or is it just more watches and jewelry and cars and boats and houses and stuff like that? Because when does the conspicuous consumption end? Really? When does the materialism end, really? So, and when we had this conversation a couple months ago with Jordan Peterson, it was super clear. Like, you get more meaning in your life when you go and solve world problems than when you buy a third boat or a third house or a third car or whatever it is. You can take that money and start an entrepreneurial project that can bring a lot of meaning and value to society. So the fight was also especially important because there were actually really harsh words spoken between the fighters beforehand. And this is becoming more and more tribal in many ways, that this is anti-Russian or anti-Muslim or anti-whatever it may be. And that is not good that we are tribally fighting like that. This earth is one tribe. And we are lucky and grateful to have this place together, and the fact that we're still calling each other out across nation borders as horrible people without even knowing who someone is it's extremely bad and difficult to deal with and find reparations through. So that was apparently one of the reasons why Khabib, after the fight, was really angry and went out and tried to drop kick Dennis, and he ended up, or Dylan, and he tried to drop kick him, and that was a major issue of the fight, as well as afterward there was a whole mob of fighters versus a mob of fighters amongst the two teams that were fighting against each other. Blindsiding each other, all this kind of stuff. And that looks kind of bad for the UFC. And that the question is now, like, what are we going to do moving forward? How are we going to have very calm, but also, you know, very still fighting, but calmer fighting, and what are the athletes doing with their money? Why can't we just be more transparent about all these things? And how can we transcend fighting and transcend ego in general so we can figure out how to sustain and progress collectively? So these are just some of the thoughts on the McGregor-Khabib fight on UFC 229. Something that I found really interesting about what we're doing right now is that, we're talking about UFC right now, and the last couple thoughts on episodes were on attention and time. It was on the Me Too movement and Kavanaugh. And then there was another one that was on, we just did it on sociopathy and Jake Paul. So we're talking about sociopaths, we're talking about Me Too, we're talking about time and attention and social media and the technology economies and that kind of stuff. And now we're talking about, so this is a multidisciplinary show. That's the point of what I'm saying. And if you stick around with us and join this community, we will continue talking about the disciplines and how they all interact and engage with one another, and how that gives us a better, more well-rounded understanding of the world that we live in and how we can best move forward. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Sparring is actually quite fun. Really, it is. And I do spar. And I would, sparring is something that's just good. It feels good, for your body to move around like that. But at the same time, you never purposely want to hurt someone. Only if you are absolutely being challenged, about to be physically injured, do you want to use that. And so when we do this whole thing on the fight stage, it becomes a whole different nuanced conversation. Thanks for tuning into this episode. We greatly appreciate it. Go and create, go build, go manifest your destiny. Much love, and we will see you soon. Peace.